So a couple things that were shocking is just the speed that you move. But if you wanted to launch a program in a university because you're shared governance, good luck on getting that thing live within 2 to 3 years. At Walmart, 1 month, 2 months, because you can just apply a ton of resources. And the expectation is, hey, so one of the things I did when I first went in there is I led high potential development. So that's for high performing, high potential, senior level leaders. So senior director for your corporate audience that are on succession plans to officer. I didn't even know what that language meant when I went in, but it was a big problem to solve. We developed a year-long journey for these folks that are on succession plans. I'm like, well, how long till we need to launch? Oh, we need to launch in a month and a half. It's the first time since grad school I pulled all-nighters. So the amount of work that you do is just enormous.
In a corporate world where all employees have great leaders with no egos that create fun cultures where people can do their best work, the employees and companies thrive while doing great things for the customers, themselves, and each other.
Well, we know that rarely happens. I'm Jeff Palacio. I have been a leader for over 40 years for every t-shirt size company, from small 16 employees to extra large over 1 million. Please join me while I interview outstanding leaders that will share stories of great leadership and not so great. It will help you become a better leader while poking fun at all the crazy shit that happens in corporate America.
Hi, I'm Joe Deshawn, and welcome to the Corporate Couch with Jeff Palacio. Today's episode is brought to you by Palacio and Partners, providing turnkey podcast creation, hosting, production, promotion, and related creative resources for you and your business. Today, Jeff is interviewing Frank Niles. Frank is a strategic advisor and fractional CHRO who helps senior leaders and management teams address the people and leadership challenges that affect business performance. He's a former leader at Walmart and a former business owner. He works with organizations ranging from large publicly traded companies to mid-size and smaller firms seeking to grow. Frank is also a sought-after speaker who regularly addresses executive teams, industry conferences, and professional audiences. His insights have been featured by CNN, Fast Company, NBC, Forbes, C-SPAN, and Inc., and his writing appears in the Huffington Post, Thrive Global, and other publications focused on leadership and organizational performance. You can learn more about Frank at frankniles.com. Let's listen as Jeff talks to Frank.
Frank, welcome to the Corporate Couch this morning.
I am so happy to be here, Jeff, to join you and your listeners. It's going to be a great conversation.
As they say on the Smartless podcast, listener.
Listener. Okay. Aren't you at listeners yet?
No, I would. No, I'm excited to talk to everybody that wants to come on the podcast to chat. But I mean, really, your background's fascinating. Kicked out of school, private school, youngest paramedic in LA, Los Angeles County, rock climber, badass, Walmart professor. And I'm going to give you, I have to give the nod a little bit to Seth Godin, who's also been on my podcast. You have the second coolest glasses next to Seth.
Well, I'm jealous. I wanted to be number one, but I'll defer to Seth.
Well, he had the yellow color.
That's right.
So, but
hey, he's on brand. Whatever you think of Seth, which he's great, but the guy is on brand every time.
Oh yeah, there's no question. No question. No, that's great.
Lots for us to learn around that for sure.
Well, Frank, let's start with a fun question. Even you're pretty active out there on socials, and you got blog posts and written so many articles.
Yeah.
What one thing that even people know you fairly well would surprise them about you?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I love this for your listener. None of these are rehearsed, so you're putting me on the spot. I'll answer it with a story from yesterday because I heard something that really resonated. It honored each one of us in terms of being who we are, good, bad, and ugly. I am on the board of a women's empowerment nonprofit called Dress for Success. And yesterday we had our spring fundraiser. We had 3 really high-powered female leaders, one African-American surgeon, and then 2 women from Walmart and Tyson, another company. And one of the things that they said in the Q&A is the most effective leaders are those that show up vulnerable. And, that almost sounds cliched, but we don't all have it figured out. And so I think one of the things, because I'm really well known in the human performance and personal development space through my writings at the Huffington Post and all the rest. And so I'm paid to give advice to leaders, to people on how to live more, what I would call integrated and purpose-aligned lives. What people probably don't know is I still deal with feelings of inadequacy. You referenced I was kicked out of school. I was told I was never going to amount to anything. And I guess I amounted to some things, but I still, there's times I look around the room and I'm like, why am I in this room? Why did they invite me to come and speak to this audience? I'm
Right.
I'm not fancy. And so, there's times where absolutely every week I will experience moments of self-doubt and lack of confidence. I think I've gotten to the point in my life now I don't overcompensate by going on the other side, but they're definitely there. And that's why having good people in your corner, in your network, are really important, that you can share that with and not be judged.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. Move on to a little maybe lighter topic.
Thanks for. Now I'm gonna have to call. Good thing I have my therapist on speed dial. Thanks very much.
Well, that's why it's called the corporate couch, Frank.
That's right, exactly. Actually, this is great co-branding, because I always kind of joke when I'm in giving talks. My talks typically revolve around those kinds of subjects. So I'm like, I'm gonna start hauling a couch around to my keynotes.
Yeah. Tell me where you grew up and what was fun for you growing up, what you love doing.
So I grew up north of LA in a town called Thousand Oaks, graduated in the mid 80s. So during that whole fun, Valley Girl kind of world. And it was what I really enjoyed doing is anything but school. And so I really preferred being out. If you know that area, there's mountains all over, the beach is real close. So I would much rather be out roaming the hills than being, in the classroom. I was always a really creative kid, which now we know education tends to disadvantage creativity or not reward creativity, out of the box thinking, right? It's all about conformity, particularly at a private religious school. And so you mentioned I got kicked out. Barely graduated high school. I was a good athlete, but just really never thought education was important or needed for the dreams that I had in my life. So I just loved being outdoors. I loved, that's where I fell in love with rock climbing. Just, being outdoors, I think is what it would be. Never indoors. I loved being outside. I loved exploring. I loved building things outside, forts and, just all of that, everything that Southern California provides you the opportunity to do. I grew up without a television. I grew up in a pretty religious family. And so I think that also contributed to my exploratory nature of life.
Wow.
I definitely never was a guy who liked, and still to this day, I don't really watch television. I do enjoy shows from time to time, live, but I'm much more of, I'd rather be in the ring than watching the ring. Right. So not much of a person who needs to be entertained.
Okay. So you graduated near the bottom of your high school class. What were your kind of next steps? What were you thinking? What did you do?
Yeah, I hear that laugh in your voice, which is totally appropriate. I don't know if you remember from the 1970s, the show Emergency 51. Even though I didn't have a TV, I was aware of that show and I would sneak out and watch that at a friend's house. And I always wanted to be a paramedic. So did a bunch of things even during high school that kind of set me up for that, became an EMT, things of that nature. Worked for an EMS company and they sponsored me for paramedic school. I became a paramedic at just over 19. I was like, wow. So, which is kind of terrifying to think that I'm out there, saving people's lives on the streets of LA and, I can't even drink. But I guess it's not unlike the military.
Right.
Really good training. So I did that for a while and I'm like, man, it'd be kind of cool to go to med school, having no idea what that takes, right? Because I'm like, oh crap, I didn't even finish algebra in undergrad. So I went to a local community college and doubled up classes and aced everything and was able to lateral into the University of California and graduated from UC Riverside, originally intending to go to med school, got accepted to med school, chose not to. And that was when I kind of fell in love with actually understanding how humans think and operate and feel. And so from there, went to the University of Houston and after 8 years, got my doctorate. But again, back to the original question you had, what's one thing people don't know about you? I remember walking across that stage going, man, they've lowered standards for this whole PhD thing. How did I slip through? So, I mean, that's an inspiring story to a lot of people. It's not the best practice or my advice on how to organize your life. I have a 17-year-old daughter, and she's not going immediately to college. And she's like, but Dad, it worked out well for you. I'm like, yes, in spite. I mean, some of it was luck. A lot of it was hard work, but, probably a little bit more planfulness is better.
Yeah, well, I find, after, over 200 guests on the podcast, it's everybody has a different career journey, right? And college is not for everyone, especially today. I truly believe that. Mm-hmm. You're probably on a different track in undergraduate. Why political science? Yeah.
I actually don't really care about, I'm not actually into politics. So one of the things that I'm really intrigued by is how the intersection of cognition or thinking and emotion influence people's decisions. And so I stumbled across an article when I was in undergrad. It was called Mood Cycles or Swings. I think that's what it was. It was written by a couple of political psychologists, but they were asking questions about how do these big swings in public opinion occur in the United States? If you know United States politics, tend to go Democratic swing and then Republican swing. So what happens? I don't know. I just became really intrigued by those kinds of questions. And I never really wanted to be a clinical psychologist. And I wanted to do something that was larger than just the human. And so politics is about influencing, persuading millions and millions, if not billions of people. And there was just something about that. It was funny, though, when I had my first tenure track job interview, they asked me like a real practical politics question, like about, 14th Amendment. I didn't even know what that was because I didn't really study politics. I studied human decision making.
Right.
So that's what got me into it. I was climbing in Thailand, met somebody there who went to the University of Houston, and and my mentor said, "Yeah, this is the number one guy in the world in this area." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, I guess I'll apply and go there." Having no idea that you just don't apply to go get your PhD, but I did. One of the lessons of my life is it's amazing what you can accomplish when you have no idea what it's going to take. And I think I kind of stumbled through life like that at almost 60. I think I'm still a bit like, why are you curious?
Well, yeah, it's just your curiosity. And I really believe being open to all opportunity. Most people are not. I'm a little bit older than you. And I think, for me, it was like, I got to go to college. My dad was a union welder, $6 an hour, blue collar. Immigrated from Italy. His advice to me was, very simple. It goes, don't work with your hands, go into business. It's pretty broad, but hey, and I did well in school because, that's what I was supposed to do well in school, be great at sports, be great at school. I do find that, what really helped me, and I don't know how I got into it because my parents were not readers. If I can recall, they both passed really young, but like, I love to read. I love to read, and I loved reading. I embraced history and leadership, and I didn't know at the time, but they had these little biographies, hardcover books in elementary school. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Ben Franklin, and John Adams. I devoured them. I loved reading about it, but it's being open to opportunities, and there's something to say for the way you did it.
Yep.
Because it took you to curiosity. And if you weren't a great rock climber or intense rock climber, because I know you've done a lot in that area, you would have never met that person that recommended the program, and the person had, because you go from, California, University of California, Riverside, and you go to Houston.
I mean, it was a different world, but
yeah, sure.
But I actually got accepted to So there is some strategy involved, but I got accepted to UC Boulder, University of Colorado Boulder. And I knew if I went there, I would never finish. Less than 10% finish their dissertation in the discipline.
Yeah.
And so Houston, I kind of joke from using a religious metaphor. It's kind of like my Nineveh. Like, gosh, I don't want to go here. But going there was the best thing ever because there's not a lot of rock there. And I was really able to devote myself to the studies. And to circle back to what you say, there's actually a lot of science behind that flexibility. We talk about psychological flexibility or openness, and that really is one of the key significant drivers of a rich and full life and a satisfying life. Because if we're what's called psychologically foreclosed, rigid in our thinking, it eliminates all of the different possibilities that are out there. I call that stress-induced myopia. It's like our field of vision shrinks. That's the damaging aspect of dogma and doctrine, where there's only one answer to something. There's tons of different answers. And the more broadly we're open, the more we'll see and those opportunities present themselves. I mean, I have people tell me that, gosh, you're a lucky guy. I actually don't think that's true. There is some luck, but I think I've gone through life. I've been very fortunate. And I had very supportive parents. Just been going through life with, like I said, my eyes open and deeply curious about the world around me. I have a lot of physician friends because there's been times where I've been like, man, should I have gone to med school? And I look back, and unless I was on the cutting edge of some scientific development, like a new surgical technique or something like that, that would not have been a career for me, because I really value outside the box kind of thinking and experiencing life. And if you're doing heart surgery on me, I don't want you thinking outside the box. I want you following your training on how to put the ventricle back together, right?
Right. Not the time to be experimenting with me.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. You graduate with your PhD and Master of Arts from University of Houston. So what was next? Like, what was your kind of the first post education?
As soon as I finished the University of Houston, I moved to Thailand for a part of the season. So I graduated, if my memory serves, knowing I was going to be on here. I figured you would ask questions like this. So I'm like, okay, now when did I graduate? What's the order of operation? Because I don't even remember. Half of what I'm saying here may not even be true. No. So I graduated in 98, caught a plane and went to Thailand, graduated in the winter, went there for 3 months and climbed.
Any fun stories in Thailand after you graduated? Or?
There's a number of fun stories. One of which is when you climb a sea stack in the middle of the Andaman Sea, make sure that the guy really is going to come back and pick you up. So if you've ever flown over, you've seen pictures. There's lots of freestanding, really small, they're not islands, they're just pinnacles of rock that are sticking up out of the ocean. And so myself and my climbing partner were like, hey, look, we want to climb this one. So we hired a long tail boat guy. You've probably seen those in movies, a long boat there is no OSHA over there. It's like open flywheels, the whole bit, right? We get over there, we climb up on top of the bimini and jump onto the first hold. And then the guy's off. And we told him, we're like, we'll be, come back in 3 hours. We get to the top, we rappel down. He doesn't come back. We're stranded in the middle of the freaking ocean. And so we ended up, it's not as bad as it sounds, but it could have been really bad. And keep in mind, it's hot. So we were able to flag down and basically got extorted for a lot of money for another long tail boat to let us get on.
The first guy probably made a deal with his buddy. He probably said, hey, listen, I'm going to strand these guys. You wait. I'm supposed to pick them up in 3 hours, show up in like 4.5, and we'll split whatever they pay.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. That's a really good insight. I hadn't thought about it at the time.
It's the New York Italian in me. I'm always for that. Yeah, there you go.
It is the New York Italian. You're like coming from the street. You're like, this is how we run the game, right? Yeah, but that was something. But some great stories from that time. I mean, that really shaped everything. Kind of a lot of my approach to life and the things that I love. So I love cooking, particularly I love Thai cooking. I lived in a bungalow on the beach in Riley Beach, for your listener who may have been there, in Riley Beach. And so I lived in a bungalow in exchange for rent. I cooked in the local little restaurant. So I
Oh,
learned how to make
wow.
curries and pad thai. And my partner, she is not much of a cook, and
Yeah,
she's quite
love
happy
that.
she's with me. So that's how we divvy up. She's a massage therapist, so I get that benefit, and
Perfect. I
she
love
gets the
that.
food.
I
So
love
it all
Thai food.
works.
Yeah.
I love the spice, love the
Yeah.
flavors, love just
Yeah.
the verve of
Yeah.
it all. It's just big
So
and
then you
bold,
come
and
out of
yeah,
Thailand,
not
you
subtle.
say, I'm going to be a professor for
Yeah.
16 years.
Yeah, again, one of those you don't know, that you don't know what it takes, right? I mean, of course, I had good mentors, and you understand what you do, but yeah, I started applying to tenure track jobs. If you know anything about becoming a tenure track professor, it's pretty akin to winning the lottery. I mean, those are very difficult jobs to get. And so I had a number of interviews, none of which landed, and then had an interview up here in Arkansas. I look up here, Arkansas. I didn't even know where Arkansas was. I had to pull like an atlas down. I'm like, where's Arkansas? And there is a liberal arts college up here that asked me to come up for an interview. So I came up for an interview. It went, I guess, reasonably well. And mind you, here I have a PhD. I'm like $60,000 in debt or more. When I come, I let my lease go when I moved to Thailand. So I come back, I get an efficiency apartment over a laundromat in a complex. This is in Houston, that in a complex that the vast majority of tenants were strippers. And just because of where I was, that's the kind of rent that I could afford, right? So literally, so you get the picture. I mean, there's like one window in my efficiency apartment. And in fact, the guy who rented it to me berated me because of my income to debt ratio. And here I've got a freaking doctorate. And this guy that I don't even think he went to college giving me financial advice and why I should be eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
Wow. Yeah, debt to income ratio, it's pretty advanced. I mean,
Yeah, right. And so I remember I'm sleeping on a mattress on the floor because I didn't have a bed frame. And I get a call from the university going, we would like to extend you an offer. And I'm like literally one step away from homelessness, right?
right.
Not really, but I could have moved back in with my parents.
Yeah.
And they're like, will you take it? And I'm like, oh yeah, I'll take it. And so I think it was like $38,000 a year or whatever. That was a story.
Wow.
Is keep your eye on the ball, truly. Keep your eye on the ball. I don't know where I developed the confidence from. Probably, again, a good family I grew up in, but I just never have a view that anything's going to stand in the way.
Yeah.
And, it's not out of arrogance or anything like that. Because again, I don't feel like I deserve really anything, and so when I got tenure, I still had, as you know about the tenure process, you're basically working for 7 years and not knowing if you're going to get a job, right? If you're going to have a job going on the long run. And I remember when I got tenure, I'm like, gosh, dang, man, they are really lowering the standards again. How did I get that? And then I get hired at Walmart and I'm like, man, they just let anyone in now? And then I get hired, to give speeches for $10,000, $15,000. I'm like, what? This must be low.
Yeah.
So back to your original question, every single person, I imagine all 200 that have been on your podcast, all struggle with self-doubts from time to time. And for the listeners, that's just what it means to be a human being.
Right.
But if we know what we love, we know what our capabilities are, man, run towards the goal, not away from it.
So talk about, Frank, in terms of, you're a professor of political science at the university, 16 years. Besides all the research you did, and those learnings, obviously, what was the big takeaway for you as you then pivot to a Fortune 1 company? I love how you put that. And, and what you do today in terms of executive coaching and leadership consulting and culture consulting. Talk about that.
That's a great question. And it is one that I've given quite a bit of thought. So I'll try to make it not as stock as I could make it sound. You actually have to go back to grad school. And when I was in grad school, there was a time, I know I'm very different now, but there was a time I was thinking about leaving grad school and going to seminary. In Texas, a James Tallarico kind of thing,
Wow.
So I was thinking about going to seminary. And my dad's a very religious man, but he said something really smart. He goes, you really felt like God brought you here, whether you believe in God or not, but that was his view, that God brought you here. And I want you to really think about, like, what is it that makes you come alive? I mean, before you make this decision, that would be a big pivot. And that kind of advice stuck with me a really long time. And fast forward, I started contributing to the Huffington Post, and we had the good fortune of being with Ariana and other thought leaders, kind of personal development, I guess, gurus. And we launched the first web-based app. It's not really an app, but it was on the web. And it was, from thought leaders, like things that you do to be grounded and centered. And I started thinking about, started thinking about, what is that through line in my life that energizes me? And I developed an activity that I actually use with my executive coaching clients now, and students and everyone. And I don't care what you call it, but I called it at the time, identifying your passion thread. And I kind of sat down and thought about, over my career, whether it's rock climbing, running the mountains of Southern California, grad school, then being a PhD, being a professor, because that looks a lot different in people's minds from being an extreme rock climber, climbing mountains all over the world, right? It's like, how's that work? And then, of course, when I went to Fortune 1, same kind of thing. And so for me, to answer your question, this was my thought process. For me, I am most alive and have the greatest impact when I am experiencing three things: adventure, discovery, and helping other people. Adventure, discovery, and helping other people. So one of the things that motivated me to leave the academic life, because that's a cush life. You cannot be fired. I mean, outside of the university, going out of business, or you doing some kind of, ethical thing, is the currency of success within academics is publishing articles and books. Students, not every university like this, but there is an underlying thought. There's an underlying impression among professors that students are kind of an impediment for them to do real work, which is writing. I actually love students. I love being in the classroom. I love communicating. I love their energy. I live in a university town. I almost get a little depressed during the summer because there's not 45,000 extra kids here. I just love their curiosity, their energy. And the thing that I loved about being a professor was actually being in the classroom. And so it was that light switch that went on. I didn't have it. It wasn't crystallized in the ways that I'm describing it now, but I knew that there was just something that felt off. So I started thinking about, and that's why I started writing for the Huffington Post, getting my ideas and thoughts out there to a much broader audience. I wrote an article once, and it was right after Manny Pacquiao lost a fight, and like his trainer reached out to me on how to manage depression that comes along with losing a fight that big. And I'm like, what? Like, somebody actually read something I wrote, wow, and is going to share it with somebody like that? Yeah. Are you kidding me? Right. And again, it's not because I needed to have those kinds of accolades. It's just, I knew that I have something to say that I want to have a bigger impact in the world. And so I was invited to do a keynote speech at Walmart. And in Northwest Arkansas, I was still under the impression Walmart's like, hometown employer. Had no idea that, this is the biggest retailer in the world, right? I mean, you just don't. And so I go over there. I'd never been to the home office, went in to a big auditorium. All the execs were in there and everything. I guess I did an okay job, and they recruited me. And so for me, everything organizes around that through line. I really need to be kind of in an environment where it's a little bit scary, whether it's coaching an executive, coming on a podcast. This isn't that scary, but doing whatever, it's got to be a little bit scary. It's got to be adventurous. And I'm more suited to building than sustaining. I certainly can sustain, but what brings me alive is building cool stuff that impacts people's lives. Yeah. But when you think back to being a paramedic, what's the similarity? I've been asked this on interviews all the time. It's like, paramedic, you're doing all this crazy ass stuff on the streets of LA, and now you're like a nerdy professor. Well, first off, I'm like almost an accidental academic, right? I mean, I am not a nerd. I have some nerd qualities, so don't get me wrong, but like, I don't play board games or anything like that. I don't read a ton. But being a climber is adventurous. It's creating new things. I've had the good fortune to develop a lot of routes here in Arkansas, which is now world-class climbing. And you get to give that to the next generation. Same thing as being a professor, same thing as being in the corporate world and the jobs that I did there. Same thing what I do now is, and I'm involved in board work, so for me, I love answering big questions and applying energy to solving those questions. But it's got to help people.
So you're in academia, you go speak at Walmart. Was that like your first paid keynote you ever had?
No, I had done paid keynotes before, but the other part that is not in my bio, I did stand-up comedy during college. So I did stand-up comedy in clubs in LA and in Orange County in college. Okay. So I had kind of started developing the skill to be a public speaker. Yeah. But no, I had done small gigs, a couple $1,000, honorariums before that. But this came through a former student of mine who I'd been talking to about my interest in, hey, so what is Walmart like? I knew nothing about Walmart. Right. And this is something maybe, again, this might be interesting to you. I tell this in my story all the time, is I entered into Walmart through the HR department, through people and culture. Right. I had never even heard of HR until 2015. Right. I didn't even know what HR was. I think HR was a role or something, right? And all of a sudden I find myself as part of HR on the talent development team in India, standing up tech centers over there for back end, website stuff. And I'm like, wow, who gets to do this? Right. And this is HR, right? Yeah. So anyways, they hired me. It was for like a year beginning meeting. And I just went in there and did the show, talked, I think it was about conflict resolution. And, I do a lot of public speaking and talk to folks about how to do public speaking, really favorable feedback, because I treat, whether it's to 5,000 people or 50 people, you're just having a conversation. Right. And so I think going in there and having that conversation, bringing my personality to bear, it was like, what? We need to get this guy inside the blue walls,
Right. Yeah, that's fantastic.
They have a very respectful culture. It's almost church-like at times, very inclusive within the home office, very inclusive, really emphasize the need for belonging and inclusivity, which really resonates with me.
I have two questions immediately, and they're totally unrelated, but I want to ask them both. So I love the stand-up comedy thing. I've interviewed a lot of people on podcasts that have done improv, that have gone on to be executive coaches. It's been fantastic.
There's a whole market there.
Yeah, sure. What was the worst when you were doing stand-up? Either the worst or best line a heckler ever had while you were on stage?
Are you drowning in boring corporate communications? Palacio and Partners is here to rescue you. We transform internal podcasts from snooze fest to must-listen content that actually connects your team and strengthens your culture. Imagine podcast episodes that make your employees laugh while staying informed. Our founder, Jeff Palacio, doesn't just create podcasts, he creates conversations that break through the noise. Whether you're a growing startup or a massive corporation, we turn your company's story into audio gold. Leadership becomes human. Remote teams feel connected. Your message cuts through the clutter. Palacio and Partners, where corporate communications gets a fun makeover. Let's make your podcast work harder than your email inbox ever could. Jeff is happy to share his insights on podcasting with you. You can contact him via LinkedIn or schedule a Zoom call via the link in the episode description.
What was the worst when you were doing stand-up? Either the worst or best line a heckler ever had while you were on stage?
I actually never had a heckler.
Really?
I never did. I had go home, that kind of stuff, but never like, I think it was, those were different days in the 80s. Yeah. You could talk about things you can't talk about now.
Right.
And so for your listeners, I'm not going to go too deep into this. Sam Kinison was very influential in my approach, my topics, my delivery. In fact, two friends that were girls, they, for my birthday, they got us all seats almost front row seats to one of Sam's last shows in Las Vegas before he unfortunately passed.
Yeah.
So if you know anything about his brand, that was kind of my approach. So didn't create a lot of space for hecklers other than people going, that is the most disgusting thing I've ever heard, which for me is not a heckle.
Thank you for that. So my other question, which is more corporate related, is, okay, so you're at a university, 16 years, you don't even know what HR is, besides that one professor that, had that inappropriate relationship with a student, I'm sure. But
that's
anyhow,
right. Which did happen.
Walmart, the biggest company in the world, what's the biggest shock factor or biggest shock factors? Like, holy cow, I didn't know this was going to happen.
Yeah. So I love it. That's such a great question. And it's been really relevant right now because my partner, she's only been at Walmart for 3 weeks. So she's brand new Walmartian. And so I was able to kind of relive my experience there. When you're a professor, I literally lived in an ivory tower or in a granite tower. So, I had a corner office in a cathedral with a small army of TAs, and nobody told me anything to do. You go to Walmart and the desk is like twice the width of your shoulder. And I'm like, what? There is no desk, right? I think that. But I kind of joke that desk size is inversely related to comp. Right? Because, you go from being a professor to Fortune 1 and the math looks very different.
Right.
You don't have to budget things like you had to in the past, right? So a couple things that were shocking is just the speed that you move. And you're a corporate guy, so you maybe have a better view on this, and maybe it's different in other companies. But if you wanted to launch a program in a university because you're shared governance, good luck on getting that thing live within 2 to 3 years.
Right.
At Walmart, 1 month, 2 months, because you can just apply a ton of resources. And the expectation is, hey, so one of the things I did when I first went in there is I led high potential development. So that's for high performing, high potential, senior level leaders. So senior director for your corporate audience that are on succession plans to officer. I didn't even know what that language meant when I went in, but it was a big problem to solve. What I did is I developed a year. I'm like, I did this as a prof. I developed a year-long with my team. We developed a year-long journey for these folks that are on succession plans. I'm like, well, how long till we need to launch? Oh, we need to launch in a month and a half. It's the first time since grad school I pulled all-nighters. So the amount of work that you do is just enormous. The second thing is I cannot tell you how many incredibly bright people I met during my time at Walmart. Also, a lot of not incredibly bright people that knew how to play the game and rose up through the ranks. But you probably have stories in your career about that. You're like, how are they a vice president?
Right.
But I met some of the smartest. I just learned so much. It was like paid grad school. I wouldn't be able to do what I do now, across the globe, helping companies and helping leaders perform at the best level that they can without time at Walmart. You learn more, and I say this, and it's not hyperbolic. Maybe a little bit, but not much. You learn more in like a week or a month there than you do more in a week or a month there than you would do in a year at another company, just because it's so enormous and the expectations are so high. So it was shocking. I didn't know if I was going to be chained to a desk, literally, because I'm like, I have so much freedom as a professor. I was a little bit scared. There was some of that chained feeling. The other thing that came as a really big surprise is in academics, you never even think about your leader. There is no leader. You're a tenured professor. You're your leader. And the provost or the president, they're just out there for fundraising and stuff. Leadership in the corporate world is incredibly important. You can have a manager that's incredibly empowering and they're concerned about your career and they think of development opportunities for you, or you can have managers that block, that undermine, that sabotage. And so, as I don't know if we'll talk about this, but a lot of the work I do now is really helping leaders become really effective at what they do. And part of that is tapping into the basic psychological needs that every single human has. And so I think any leadership philosophy has to be grounded on the psychology of human needs. And so that's where I apply all of my academic training to what I do in the corporate world. And there was a real appetite for that at Walmart. So I'm like, I think I'm onto something.
Yeah, we're going to definitely get back to that. I want to talk about, I mean, you're kind of leading edge in terms of, and I know this is part of, what you did, you believe in health and fitness and mindfulness, but I mean, you're rolling out like mindfulness programs, 7,000 leaders at Walmart. That's and at that time, that's kind of leading edge. I mean, I would say it's still leading edge right now if people are doing it. So talk about that and how did they ask you to do that? Was that your initiatives? So talk about those projects.
When I came into Walmart, it was like, we've got this enterprise leadership development program. At the time, I think it was called Leadership Essentials. We want to train every leader within the corporate office. That's like 9,000 people. Figure out how to do it. So, I mean, I'm given carte blanche to do that. Well, I guess to your question, what you're referring to is a training program that I branded Lead from the Heart. It's my IP. And it really was an outgrowth of all the writing that I'd been doing for the Huffington Post. And I got a lot of visibility in the media, CNN and NBC and Inc. and Fast Company and all the rest. And so all of those thoughts have been kind of percolating around in my mind during that time. I had just recently come out of a marriage, and my wife at the time, we're still really good friends, but I learned enormous amounts of things from her in terms of mindfulness, because that's a core element of her practice is mindfulness. So I was really influenced by John Kabat-Zinn, who's a physician and out on the East Coast and runs a mental health clinic out there. That's really, and a palliative care that's really rooted in mindfulness. So that was percolating in my brain. Combined with that, I became, within the home office, pretty well known, which at times created friction because, in the corporate world, you're like, everybody says, oh, we're a family, but they're very attentive to levels. And you're like,
you were getting too much attention, Frank.
I was getting too much attention. So, what do you call it? My flame was a little bit too bright, right? And so I started interacting and was being asked for advice from, VPs, SVPs, and I'm way down the hierarchy. And so combined with that, I just started getting invited to speak at team building events and started developing a real reputation around kind of the intersection of business, strategy, and psychology. And so what I did is I launched Lead from the Heart, and there's 5 different components to it. One is values work, one is mindfulness work, and then one is self-awareness and kind of empathy. And it was a modular program. So if you're a leader there, you go, hey, we need to do an offsite. I'd like you to come to talk about emotional intelligence, for instance. Most people don't even know what that is, and you're like, okay, well, really, what is it so I started developing my consultancy chops there as well. This thing just took off. And all of a sudden I'm finding myself getting invited to go to India and South Africa to deliver this course out there that I developed, literally outside of any of the channels of content development or anything. I mean, a company that big, they have armies of content developers and instructional designers. I just built it in-house. Wow. I'm like, this is my idea. I'm going to run with it.
Tell me about the final straw. Like you're saying, okay, it's become centralized. I'm getting too much attention and that's pissing off the upper level executives. Was that kind of the final straw?
So when you go back to adventure discovery and helping other people, I had a couple of friends reach out to me, one of whom was a former MBA student of mine, and the other I met through him as well. And they had started a consulting firm, but it was still kind of in the nascent stage. And they're like, hey, why don't you come on over and let's build a practice around leadership development? And I'm like, kind of applied that adventure discovery, helping other people. And I'm like, yeah, talk about adventurous, right? I mean, who knows it's kind of like you starting the podcast. There's no guarantee you're going to get 2 listeners, let alone 1,000 listeners, right? You're like, I'm just going to go do something because it's cool and it scratches my itch. And so I left when that opportunity came along. So it wasn't really dissatisfaction so much as it was a new opportunity to do something really cool and scary. It was an opportunity to leave and build something. Like I said, I enjoy building things and envisioning something that's never existed before. When you look at the through line of my life, you see it, that's been everywhere.
So Frank, you leave Walmart, you get a couple of clients. So tell me how that pivots, into what you're doing now, or it builds on it, and kind of what you're working on.
Again, not really any design. It's where the need is. Most all of my clients come through my network or network adjacent folks. If you think about kind of the work that I do now, there's a few buckets. One is, and in no particular order, so this isn't anything around the amount of work per bucket. One is I support through executive coaching CEOs and COOs and CHROs of large publicly traded companies. You've been in the industry a long time, and I'm sure you've interacted with people that just go, man, Jeff is the guy. And I think I have a lot of credibility, and people trust me. These senior leaders trust me. Confidentiality is super important to me. And so it's a real honor to be able to be in the room of people that are like literally moving markets. And it's deeply encouraging from a human perspective to see, man, they deal with the same insecurities all the rest of us do, but they can't show it to other folks. So that's one bucket of work that I do. It's not a main revenue driver, but it is a bucket of work that I do. Then the other bucket of or focus area is really helping senior leadership teams come together, certainly those that are being formed, but really helping to strengthen culture at the top of the house. So for instance, I have a client right now, CEO's been enrolled for, and it's a Fortune 200 company. This individual's been enrolled for 2 years, had never been a CEO before, had to completely build the C-suite. There's only 2 legacy members in the C-suite. So there's 9 total, one of the legacy was actually leveled down. So you can imagine, level down to a supporting position, the new COO comes in. And so there's a lot of dynamics there. So I help executive leadership teams sort through those dynamics at that level and strengthen their culture around, kind of ways of working, do a lot of kind of behavioral analysis. What are the things? So one of the, just peel back kind of the curtain. One of the things I ask them is, what are the behaviors you need from each other to be maximally effective? And from there, we can develop a cultural alignment and expectations of how the team functions. And then that will get pushed down through the organization. And so a lot of my time individually, I have other folks that work for me, but I spend most of my time at the C-suite level, helping them think through not only how they function, but do we need to, for instance, reconsider our current operating model? We've got these business objectives. What does our people strategy need to look like in order to help us achieve those objectives? So I'll work pretty closely with CFOs and COOs and CHROs, but most of my work focuses on people and culture, and how to strengthen and develop people and culture to achieve a commercial outcome.
Yeah.
And then, some of the other work is just more broadly through the org, is a lot of work around leadership development. So we build leadership development programs or journeys for organizations. Most of it asynchronous, in person, online, use AI, I'll use a lot of AI in that space as well. So that's, I would say, for the easiest for listeners, is everything people and culture tied to business objectives. That's what we do.
Talk about, I saw one of your blogs was, and really intrigued me, was don't hire for culture fit, hire for culture contribution. Can you expand on that?
Yeah. And that's actually gotten some legs. People are actually talking about it. In fact, somebody on LinkedIn plagiarized it and never, I sent him a note, but never.
I didn't mean to, Frank. I didn't think you.
Yeah, I know. I had. Maybe that's how we got connected here. So in my experience, again, working with a lot of companies, as well as just having been kind of in a high control environment, religious environment growing up, I think we all have a feeling we know what fit means. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with fit. Like if you are just, so again, to give you the example, we've talked about this, Walmart is a very high respect place. Respect for the individual is one of their core values. So if you come in dropping F-bombs and, treating people poorly, you're not going to be a good fit for the Walmart culture. You might work well in other cultures, but not for Walmart. But what we see, or what I have seen over time, is fit becomes a way that we can become increasingly exclusive, and organizations, they use that to exclude certain individuals, certain skill sets, certain whatever. Oh, he or she's not a good fit. When we hire, when I was at the consulting firm, but also with clients, I help clients think through, not only are we hiring for somebody to do a job now, and that's a good fit for the organization, but we want to hire somebody that's going to elevate the culture and elevate the organization. And that may mean that they may create some heartburn and may create some friction because they're looking outside the box and they're going to challenge us to go in new directions that maybe we have never thought about. So culture contribution is really about hiring for individuals that, that are aligned with their cultural values, but that will challenge the status quo, will contribute in ways that make you a little bit uncomfortable, but help you grow the business and impact your industry.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. I've interviewed Claude Silver, the chief heart officer at VaynerX, and she has a similar line of thinking.
But it's threatening it can be threatening to leaders because, the culture contribution folks, they tend to be very innovative, forward thinking, curious. Yeah. And, can I nerd out for 1 second?
Absolutely.
Okay. So in social science, there's a thing called the iron law of oligarchy. That's a mouthful. And iron law of oligarchy was developed as a way to understand, it was back in the mid 20th century, as a way to understand what happens to leftist movements is they start out, storm the barricades, right? But then the leaders in those movements, they stop being quite as firebrand as they were. Why? Because now they're in a position of influence they're building an organization. And so, the guys and the gals out there, with the torches going, burn down the barricades, that actually can threaten our position within an organization. And so we see that within the corporate world. All of a sudden you get to a certain level and you're like, ooh, this is my turf and I need to protect it. Now, all of a sudden you bring in somebody that's a culture contributor that's going to stir things up and go, have you ever thought about doing it this way or that way? That can be very threatening to one's position within the organization. And so we tend to see those people sidelined. Now, culture contribution doesn't mean that you can be a butthead, but it does mean that I think the most successful organizations and the most successful teams are looking for people that will elevate the team, not keep the team at the status quo.
You get a lot of your business from referrals, but even those that you get referred to, as well as, people you reach out, potential clients you reach out, culture is kind of a fuzzy thing sometimes. And I think I'm always shocked. And there's some reasons for not caring if you're the CEO about your culture. Like if you're going to sell the company, you don't care. You're not trying to build something. You're trying to sell something. But for those that have at least a little bit of interest on it, but when you meet with them, you're like, I don't know if they really get it. Do you kind of move on from that opportunity, or do you?
That's a really good question. And I'll give you an example for how to sell leadership development. There is a jillion leadership development vendors out there. Okay. That's a crowded marketplace. The way that I approach it, not to give away too much of what we do, but the way that I approach it, it's not about leadership development. It's like, tell me some problems that you're having. An article is coming out, I don't know, this month or next month, or a column in Pet Food Industry magazine. And one of the challenges at the pet food manufacturers just across the board, but focusing on pet here, is, that's a hard job. It's a hard job. There's 3 shifts running and, it's hard, right? And so not surprisingly, there's a high level of turnover. Well, if my memory serves correct, even for a frontline worker, hourly worker in a manufacturing facility, the cost to replace them, we're not talking a cost of lost expertise or anything like that. The cost is like $36,000. And so what I do is I have conversations with prospects around, okay, so what are the big challenges facing your business right now? And they'll say, so in this article, I talk about how to reduce turnover. and they'll say, man, we have turnover. We have employee churn at like 40%. We need to reduce that. Well, I know 9 times out of 10, I know what the issue is, assuming that they're paying equitably at market rate or above. So let's just say they're paying above, but there's still all this churn. 9 times out of 10, it comes down to a cultural problem. Now, I don't talk about it as a cultural problem. It comes down to a leadership problem. Is that all of the frontline supervisors, and you remember from corporate America, you do a really good job as an individual contributor. What do? They reward you with what?
Yeah, they promote you with no training.
They promote you with no training. And so what we do is then we come in and we do a full-on needs analysis, even though in our brain, we're like, yep, that's what the problem is. So, we talk to executives, we talk to frontline managers, we talk to the folks working on the floor. And sure enough, it's like, golly, my supervisor sucks. He doesn't know how to do, or she doesn't know how to do anything. And so that's how we kind of get into these culture discussions. I'll give you another example at a higher level. So I was engaged to do an offsite for, the network is just amazing. So I have really good business partners in India. And there was one of the large oil and gas companies here in the United States, one of the big 3, and they were doing a corporate offsite. And so just as things happen, my partner over there, she has a partner at this company who was a VP level and said, hey, do you know anybody in the United States who can do these things? They're like, oh, this guy, Frank Niles, he does this kind of stuff. So I get into the room and there's 33, I think, direct reports of the senior leader. And that's a first. I'm like, 33, what are we? Anyways, we come in to do one thing and completely pivot to talking about behaviors. There's low accountability on the team. The team was too large. And so that led to very nice retainer for a couple of years. I helped them re-envision what the C-suite should look like, what the ideal size of the team should be. I met with all of the different team members. All of these are SVP level, provided some advice around that. No, I wasn't making workforce decisions. I wasn't like Bob in Office Space, but definitely provided some insight around that. And then went on a culture strengthening journey for 2 years. We didn't start out with the word culture, but that became the work that we did. So to your point, culture is such a gushy word, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like emotional intelligence or psychological safety. If I hear those words again, I swear, every time I hear those words, I lose a year of my life. Like, let's be specific. EQ, are you talking empathy, self-awareness, self-management? Right. Let's be specific. And so culture is one of those.
Yeah.
But, from PNC is just a word that's recognized loosely. That means people in culture. That's what I do. And so that kind of gets you in the door, but it doesn't give you any specifics. Right. So I think to do what I do, you have to be really consultative, like really understanding what your pain points are, helping guide the client in the direction based upon your vast amount of experience. Not unlike a doctor, is they make their own decision, but they're talking to you because you are an expert.
Yeah. And
you've been down this pathway. Yeah.
Frank, I love helping 2 groups of people. One's that recent college graduate or maybe high school graduate today, and they're going to begin their professional career. What advice would you have for them as they go get that first post-education job as well as begin their career?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's one that a lot of folks, they're just excited to have their first job. I think one of the most important things is when you first are hired, nail the fundamentals, meaning master the basics before you want to stand out. Show up on time, meet deadlines, say what you're going to do and follow through. There's a tendency to overpromise or raise your hand for everything. And then all of a sudden you're missing deadlines. Do not miss your deadlines. Your brand is established within the first weeks, if not months, when you're at an organization. A second thing is, to the extent possible, learn the business. Even if you're in, I'll just use my experience, HR. When I onboarded into Walmart, I spent a week in a supercenter, a week in a small format or what are called neighborhood markets, and a week in a club. because when you're a corporate employee, you're a cost center. You're not generating, and unless you're business development, you're basically a cost center. So I think it's important to go to where the cash registers are with quotes around it.
Yeah.
So really learn the business, because as you're thinking about promoting within your organization, leaders are very attentive to whether you're just learning what you do as a task or you're learning actually the business. So, how do you make money, whether it's in car dealerships, whether it's insurance, just so you can have more sophisticated conversations and really position yourself as somebody who understands where you fit in the larger picture.
Right.
Another thing is, I'm a big, huge believer in this. Get a mentor. Ideally out of your chain of command or out of your reporting structure. Get a mentor. Never have lunch alone, or rarely have lunch alone. I know we're virtual now, but to the extent possible, have lunch with other people. You're going to get your next job through your network, not through applying for it. Ask a ton of questions. Now, don't be annoying. Okay. One of the things I freaking hated in grad school, somebody would read a book and you'd come to discuss it and they had to read questions. They asked all these questions as a way to add value, No, don't be an annoying person.
Right.
But if you don't know something, ask a question. Like, how do we do this? The people that think you're dumb for asking that question are probably people you don't need to have in your sphere of influence.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things I tell college kids, I love going back to college campuses. I was just on a local campus out here. They brought me in to talk about change management, but for an hour and a half, all I did is talk about what it's like to be at the biggest retailer in the world and what lessons they need to know as a business class before going in. And one of them is start acquiring your own personal board of directors, that we are the CEO of our own lives. And that's not out of arrogance. I don't take it as self-centeredness, but the only person that cares about your career is you.
Right.
And so developing your personal board of directors that you can rely on, that you can support them and they can support you, and take them through your career. I have folks that are still in my corner to this day, from 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Because that was really when I entered corporate America.
Right. Yeah. So interesting. Yeah. Thank you for that. The second group is everybody can be a leader, whether you're an individual contributor, but those that take that path from a IC individual contributor to being a first-time manager, and there's no training courses available at their company. What advice do you have for them?
Yeah. One is I always hear Marshall Goldsmith in my ear when I say that, because this is what he says. When you're a brand new manager or even a brand new team member, but let's focus on managers, don't add value too quickly. And that has always stuck with me. And what that means for your listeners is you're a newly hired manager. You've never led people before. Don't go in there thinking you're leading people. Go in there thinking, I am a student and I need to figure out how this business works. Ask questions, go on a listening tour. So be very careful about coming in immediately and making all kinds of changes when you don't even know who the team is, because they're sizing you up and you're sizing them up. So build relationships, set time for one-on-ones, make that a regular cadence, get to know your people. When I have a new coaching client, I ask them to walk me through, and these are not necessarily first-time managers, but I'll ask me to walk them through the day. Or if they're in person, I'll go to their office and kind of just sit there and watch them come in. And if that leader goes immediately to their office or their desk, I know what the problem is in that team is, so many of us think communication is about information transfer. It is not. It's about human connection. And so make that human connection with your team before you start making decisions. I've talked about this till I'm blue in the face, and you would think that would be the way people operate, but that's not the way they are. I just got a call from a person that said, my gosh, it's one of the big companies in this area. It's like, I just got on a new team and I don't know if I can handle being here because this person is over the top,
Right.
declarative. So just shut the heck up. Listen, support, lead from behind, and and learn about your team, learn about what they like about their job, what they don't. You're there to support your team, not direct your team.
Right. Frank, I'm so grateful that John Mercurio introduced us. I could go on and talk another hour, but maybe we'll have a part 2 someday down the road on the podcast.
We need to have a part 2.
Yeah, absolutely.
We got more stuff to talk about.
Yeah. Thank you. I was honored you came on the podcast. Thank you so much.
And I'm honored you invited me.
Joe, I got to say, I loved Frank. Let me just get the funny stuff not out of the way, but there's
plenty of it.
It's so good. Kicked out of private school, graduated towards the bottom of his class in high school, barely graduated, became the youngest paramedic in LA County, Los Angeles County at 19. Then he goes on to become a PhD, gets an efficiency apartment in this apartment complex. Most of the tenants were strippers. He slept on a mattress on the floor. He was $60,000 in student loan debt. It's so funny. I mean, the stuff he did, he graduates, gets his doctorate. I think he said it took him 8 years to get his doctorate. He's 60 grand in debt and goes.
So what does he do?
Thailand.
Goes to Thailand.
And he gets extorted by a boating guy and his buddy, I think.
That was an amazing story.
Yeah, he's a rock climber. I mean, he does so many different things. He just had so many layers to his journey. One was, we don't really talk too much about imposter syndrome on this, but he, right off the bat, what's one thing that would surprise people about you? He basically said, like, I sometimes still think, why am I in this room?
Yeah.
Like, why? And it was a constant throughout his career. He even said when he got his doctorate, his reaction was, they must have lowered the standards. How did I slip through?
But it took him 8 years to slip through. So
that shows some resilience, and he was very self-aware. He basically picked the University of Houston because he was an avid rock climber, and the other program that was best for what he did was in Boulder, University of Colorado. He goes, I would have never got my doctorate because it's just full of rock climbing opportunities and probably some other social entertainment things that people did in Colorado or do. No offense, Colorado.
No, I think what you're saying is there's no social entertainment in Houston.
Well, less. Maybe the culture was, or the personalities were less prone to partying. He basically thought it was almost a prison sentence to go to Houston, and then that's the other thing, prison sentence, and this falls in at some point. And I forget when, maybe when he was getting his doctorate, he thought about going to the seminary. Like think about that.
Well, grew up in a very strict religious environment in his childhood, so that some of that probably lingered on. Didn't have a television growing up.
Yeah, so interesting.
It was just weird stuff.
And then so then he's a tenured professor, I believe. He's happy, loves teaching. He loves being in the classroom versus writing the articles and things like that, which is the majority of professors want the articles, don't enjoy that much in terms of teaching. Then he works for a Fortune 1 company, Walmart. He's in that mill. He works for Walmart, which he basically had. He had it off, threw a line away, like saying, "Yeah, I just thought they were, just a hometown employer." But, like Fortune 1, I love that designation. He goes, I didn't even know HR existed in university. I didn't even know what it was. Oh, man. And how he talked about the speed of Walmart, decisions happen in weeks, not years. You move very fast. And the story of his desk, he goes, oh my God, at university I had this huge office, this massive desk. He goes, the Walmart desk is it's a little bigger than my shoulder width. He goes, where do I put stuff? Oh my God. But he did some leading edge things in leadership development. I mean, he was like global. I mean, and he was doing things with, EQ and mindfulness, instructing 7,000, 9,000 people, and globally India. He mentioned India and South Africa. I mean, I'm going to maybe steal one of your, since you're a tech expert, but he's running that class in India. Most companies do updates at like 2 a.m. where probably from Walmart Central Time, where most employees probably are, but or whatever. And you can't do anything about it. And he's in the middle of teaching this global leadership training, and his computer goes, yeah. And he was a stand-up comedian in college and
oh yeah, well I didn't mention that before, but by the way, I was a stand-up comedian for a while. So.
Yeah. I mean, it's just so many good parts. I'm excited to have Frank back.
He had so many stories, and you could tell at the end that he was in his mind. He was enumerating more stories, but we didn't get to talk about this. We didn't talk about this. We don't even know the stories that he had that he hadn't gotten to yet.
Yeah. And the second best glasses on a guest, Seth Godin. I'm going to give him the honor. Yeah.
Well, it's going to be hard to compete with Seth and his glasses. So he's always going to be number one. But if you can get to number two on the glasses, that's got to be important too. He talked a lot about tenured college professors, which is kind of a sore spot with me, being previously in the academic community. I've never understood why college professors can get tenure and like you and I couldn't as marketing professionals or computer professionals or something like that. And I have seen so many examples of professors that get tenure, and then he said that they live in an ivory palace. They don't even know what's going on in the world because they are so cocooned. And I've seen that so many times. And the things to get to tenure, of course, you have to publish or perish is what they call it. So you have to write articles and write books and write theses and all that kind of stuff. But once you've done all that and you get in that ivory palace and you get that big office, that's really cool. It's just a weird environment, and it's something that doesn't exist almost anywhere else. And so I thought that was interesting. He also talked a little bit about first impressions. He talked about your brand is established in the very first, he said, week or month or day or hour or whatever it would be, but you only have a little bit of time to get that first impression. And of course, that reminded me, we'll go to the episode of The Office where Jim meets Andy for the first time. And Jim he brought for his lunch, he brought a tuna salad sandwich. And so from that point on, Andy called Jim Tuna. That was his nickname. Hey, Tuna, what are you doing? Or hi, Tuna, how you doing? That kind of stuff. Poor old Jim, only had one chance to make a first impression to Andy, and he was carrying a tuna sandwich at the time. And so that's the impression they got. Kind of makes you wonder if you're in charge of a brand, if you're in charge of the Corporate Couch brand or something like that, what is the first impression that people get of that brand? And is that a good impression, and is that the kind of impression that you want to continue on with?
Wow, that's deep, Joe. Now we need to do some market research.
We need to do some market research on our brand, don't we?
Yeah.
Because I think the first impression that people get for the Corporate Couch is the business cards I hand out that has your picture on it. So
there you go.
Your face, your face, specifically your face, is the brand of the Corporate Couch. And so we got to kind of wonder, is that the right impression that we want to make? I don't know.
Right.
But I would love to have Frank back. He, book him again and let's interview him again.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Joe, we're weekends tomorrow or starting tonight. Make me laugh. Do something.
I can do something to make you laugh. Let me tell you. For the longest time, I thought that the alphabet contained only 25 letters. Did you know that?
No, why is that?
I didn't know why.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Corporate Couch. If you enjoy the podcast, I would love for you to take 2 minutes out of your day to rate us 5 stars and write a review. Please join me next week to learn from another great leader sharing their professional journey and insights.